Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Flash, as well as the latest episode of Arrow. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you don't want to hear what I say about this week's episode of The Flash, you can skip what I say about this week's episode of Arrow. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is this week's episode of The Flash. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, obviously, Barry and Iris are going out on vacation. Cisco's kind of in charge now while Barry's, on vacation with Iris, and he's got this new system called Barry. It's supposed to let him, it's like, oh, this thing will tell me what to do because it's as if Barry's here. And I love that it knows all this stuff about Barry. And he's like, oh, what's your favorite movie? And he's like, Empire Strikes Back, and it says Jurassic Park. He's like, and I do love Empire. But it's like, but now I'm thinking about it, I do like Jurassic Park might be my favorite. It's like, holy crap, how did this thing do that? I love that whole situation. But I like the overall message of this episode being the whole thing of despite the circumstances, despite everything, have faith. Keep the faith. In this particular case, obviously, Cisco's storyline in this episode is actually super sad because Breacher comes to this Earth because there's a criminal named Echo here that killed Cynthia, aka Gypsy, which is interesting timing because obviously, like I pointed it out during this week's episode of Watchmen, that Jessica Camacho popped up in that episode, and obviously, that she's the one who played Gypsy / Cynthia in this in Flash. So that's actually kind of sad to kind of make that story come back in that shape or form. I'm like, wow, that's super depressing. I guess it's supposed to be, meant to be furthering Cisco's story, but at the same time, it's like, wow, did you have to kill her to do that? That's actually like super sad to see that be the storyline. I mean, obviously you have Breacher being like, losing his only child is tough enough, and then also Cisco on top of all that, losing the woman that you once loved, despite, where things stand, it doesn't matter. Like, that was someone that you cared about at one point in time, and, so it's actually interesting, too, because we got to see how Earth 19 collectors, like, investigate. Like, Cisco makes it seem like this isn't his first time, but, like, we've never seen the full-blown squad show up. Because obviously we've seen Breacher come and we've seen Cynthia, but they're the only other people from Earth 19 we've ever really seen. Well, except for, Harry was from Earth 19, wasn't he? I think he might have been. I don't remember. Regardless. Not Harry, because that's Earth 2 Wells, but HR. Wasn't HR from Earth 19? It's been a while, so I don't remember as well, but regardless. And this episode also brought up this interesting phenomenon that I'm curious if they're ever going to tie that in. It's a whole Breacher's psychosis that basically when a person with their abilities, when someone with vibe abilities, like kind of pushes their abilities down, it ends up kind of sending their brain into like psychosis. They start hallucinating and seeing stuff. But the thing is, Cisco's thing isn't like him suppressing his powers; they're full blown gone. Or that might be the thing of like he thinks they're gone, but maybe the cure is more of a suppressant rather than a full blown cure. So maybe some form of their metahuman genes or abilities and stuff is there. Because remember what Barry saw? Barry saw Cisco running, but he was dressed up as Vibe. So that must mean at some point in time he gets his powers back when you actually think about it. I never pointed that out until just now because I was like, right, I totally forgot they did show that. So, or at the very least, it might not even be like everyone. It might just be Cisco specifically because maybe those vibe abilities make it so that you can never 100% get rid of it. Maybe on some level it's always going to, maybe the meta human cure shifted his abilities into like a different frequency that he basically would have to shift the frequency back to make it so he can access his abilities. I don't know, but the fact is they're also bringing up that Breacher's psychosis makes me think that might be something we're dealing with later on. But obviously, like, using the machine and everything, him and Breacher look back at, the moments that led to Cynthia's death and trying to find out who the killer was, and it's revealed to be Cisco. But then it's like, Breacher also brought up something interesting. He's like, there's no other person out there no other Cisco on any other Earth that's as smart as you, so you're the only one that's capable of doing this. And it puts Breacher in this complicated thing because it's like he lost his daughter to Cisco, but the thing is you're also sick, so you're not in your right mind. So it's like he was trying to give Cisco time to kind of get his affairs in order before, I take you to Earth 19, or, I just straight up end you. So there's that whole situation. So, but it turns out not to be this Cisco. It ends up being a Cisco from a different Earth, because basically he's a criminal, because different Ciscos on different Earths. I mean, to be fair, it shouldn't be too much of a shock because Cisco on Earth 2 was a villain, so much like him and Frost were bad guys. So that, like I said, that isn't too much of a stretch in that regard. So, but this Cisco, like, he's as Echo, he flips people's lives around. So it's like he can give someone a different life on a different Earth and stuff like that. And the reason why he was able to kill Cynthia is because no matter what, when Cynthia saw, because she had never seen his face before, the moment she saw Echo's face, it made her hesitate long enough for him to end up killing her, which that's a very brutal way they ended up making her die. It's not like a casual, like, it's like, no, like, he essentially vaporized her. It's literally on the same lines as, Nora getting wiped from existence. That's major hardcore, like, death, dude. That sucks. That's just heartbreaking. Like I said, it's just not only had to kill her, you had to kill her in a very extreme way too. So, but luckily, Cisco is as smart as he is, and so he ends up capturing Echo, even to the point of being like, yeah, you're smart, but I'm smarter. Because also at the same time, it's like he could have easily given into his anger and made it so it's like, oh, I'm make this a weapon, I'm gonna kill it. But that's not who he is. This is who he is. Like, he does the hero thing and capture him rather than getting full blown. I mean, I guess both justice and revenge kind of go hand in. Well, he got more justice than revenge because it's like capturing, Cynthia's killer. And like I said, this whole thing, like I said, that whole message about faith, especially in his case, I like it because it is the whole thing of, like, at the beginning I was like, oh, that's going to be a thing, because the fact is he keeps relying on Barry, the system that he built, to kind of tell him what he should do, because it's like, oh, this is what Barry would do in these circumstances. But for him, it's like, because he doesn't know, he can't save people like Barry does. For him, it's like, I don't want to be the reason why so many people die. Like, what if I fail with this whole leadership thing? So I built a system to tell me exactly what Barry would do, because Barry would be able to save so many people. But it's like, you can't be Barry. You're not meant to be the Flash. Barry chose you in this position because you are you, because you have your mind and you are who you are, with or without your powers. And that is ultimately what this was all about. It's like, you might not have faith in yourself, Cisco, but Camilla was like, I do, and so many other people do. So that gave him the confidence to, look past all of this and like, okay, figure this out the way and handle this the way Cisco does. I even like that he kind of locked him behind a barrier, and I love Preacher being like, I don't like barriers, and he's like, yeah, I know. Or what was it? I think it was like, or force fields or something like that, and he was like, I was saying that, and Cisco's like, yeah, I know you don't, buddy. So, it's just an interesting side of things. I also like the whole Camilla situation where they're laying in bed and he's like, oh, I love you, looking forward to spending more time with you. And it's just this awkward thing. And it's like, oh, and Breacher being like, oh, Cynthia would have really liked you and it would have loved you. And it's just goes like, what's not to love? And then even Breacher being like, ooh, this is awkward. I'm going to get out of here. So that's pretty neat to see that they're kind of taking the steps further with this whole relationship, though. It's kind of sad as one kind of blossoms, like, his ex is gone, but it's like, I like the message he took from it of like, she might not have been the one person I ended up with, but Gypsy led me onto the path to basically help me grow into the person I am now that's with Camilla. So I just, it's like people come into your lives for different, seasons. It's actually something I learned from like a Tyler Perry. I don't remember which one it was, but it's one of his plays. It was like a Medea play, where it's basically like people are in your life for a season. There's some people that's there for life and other people for a season. Some people come in your life just to teach you something for you to grow, and then they're going on to the next season type of situation. So I thought that was kind of that's where immediately my mind goes as well. So Ralph checking up on Frost, because Frost is trying to go after Ramsay on her own, simply because for her she feels responsible, because for one, it's like, I'm the one that said from the beginning we shouldn't trust Ramsay, but none of you listened, and look, all these people are dead. So for her, she feels like Ramsay is kind of her personal responsibility, because I'm sure she kind of blames herself on some level, because it's like, maybe if I'd given him and helped him out with the whole dark matter, maybe things would be different. I think things would literally still play out the same way, but she feels a personal responsibility, which Ralph is like, you don't have to do this on your own. Like, the fact of the matter is, believe in us, trust in us, because, going out, because it's like, because Ralph talks about his personal experience of like, you handling stuff on your own does not end well. It didn't end well for him. It kind of sent him basically, I think he was referencing like him basically at the bottom of a bottle and stuff like that. But even in the end, I guess also on her side, in her mind, it's like, I'm not going at this alone, because she shifts over her plan of trying to get to Ramsay a different way. She talks to him as Kate, which obviously he's like, oh, I'm offering you eternal life. I'm offering that life to everyone, but it's like, you're creating that life by killing people to extend your own life. But for him, it's like, oh, this is my way of battling death, because the more power I gain, the more life I can bestow upon other people. Look at this form of eternal life. But it's like, yeah, eternal life that's more like a nightmare, because look what you do to people, like the last people you sucked the life out of, basically, or rather, got what you needed from them, they turn into literal puddles of goo, But basically, because of their relationship, he ends up letting her go. But next time, it's like, I won't give you a decision. It will be the end. And so it's that, okay, so trying to reach out to his better nature didn't work, because I guess at this point in time, Ramsay is too far gone. His mind is so warped by this situation, warped from his beliefs, and a combination of his fear of death. Like I said, it's just kind of a natural human thing, but now his need to survive, he'll try to justify by being like, oh, I'm doing this for other people, when no, it's all about yourself. I said it before and I'll say it again, and his mind is getting so corrupted and warped that he thinks like, oh, like, I'm doing people a service. I am getting rid of death. I am bringing a new form of life, when in actuality your new form of life brings nothing but a new form of death, upon people. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what this means going forward with like the whole Frost situation, about like how her and Kate are going to handle this Ramsay situation. Are we going to see, Kate still going a little, well, more so Frost going, because Kate seems like she's more able to like rely on people, I guess, because Frost, it's for her, it's kind of, and it's a comparison I can't help but make, because it's a similar thing of like in Legion, both the carries, one of the carries is like, oh, you're the one that handles all the stuff, all the other stuff, I'm the one that handles the fighting. That's always been Frost's motto. That's even been something that came up earlier in the season. So I think she's like, yeah, we can't finesse our way around this. I need something to hit, let me fight, and I can, because like, I'm curious to see where it takes her now, like I said, because Kate's kind of worked with the team the entire time, so it's not a thing of she feels like she has to do this on her own. But I guess for Frost, she feels that complicated thing of like, these are Kate's friends. Yeah, they're my friends too, but I'm, it's a different lane. So she feels like that bond and trust isn't as much with her as it is with Kate, because it's like, oh, you only trust and bond with me because I'm the other half of Kate, Katie. Caitlin. I don't know. I feel like I kept saying her name different way, which Katie, yes, but like I don't know why I kept saying it differently each time. Regardless, I do apologize. So that's just kind of an interesting thing in itself. And then there's another storyline with the whole situation of Joe following this other Wells, which it's like, what are you up to? Because he is that whole thing of like, oh, I got to be the smartest person in a room. He's looking down on Joe. It's like, oh, you're just some Joe Schmo cop. Ha ha ha. So he didn't really want to give him answers. And so, I wonder what he was going to do to Joe, or was it just he was going to knock Joe out or do something? But I guess like his send off activated his gauntlet or whatever, and it ends up tunneling him in. And so now it's a thing of like, okay, so how do we get out of here? Joe's the only one that stays calm, because for him it's like, once again, the faith. It's like, I know that the team will come here, and it's so interesting because I think a lot of the Wells I think HR might be the only exception, might be the only Wells that did well with working with other people. I guess for him, because he wasn't the smartest, he was the more artist amongst all of them. So for him, he had to, compensate by joining up with other people. All the other Wells are super smart, so they're always going to have that like holier than thou, like thinking they're the smartest person in the room mentality. So it kind of puts them in a bit of a different lane. Like I said, HR was just kind of a very unique case in that remark. But I think because it's that whole thing of because you're so smart, you have a tendency to look down on people, and it's kind of a little bit of a solitude life. So now it's a situation of like, well, because of that, you find it hard to kind of have such faith in other people, in humanity. Because that's actually an interesting thing, because for Joe, it's like when Iris's mom left her and him, he kind of fell apart. But when he saw near his entire neighborhood come there to support him, bring food over for him and Iris, it made him realize, like, despite everything, people are worth putting your faith in, And so, luckily, when it's all said and done, Ralph does show up in time. But what's interesting and what caught Wells's attention, Nash's attention, is the fact is, wait, you mentioned the monitor, and it's like, wait, 'cause obviously we learned a little bit more about him last episode on Arrow, but it's like, wait, what? Nash is like, wait, what? This is about, wait, the monitor, and then like he kind of brings it up later on of like, okay, I need you guys to meet up with me here, and they're like, why? Because I can save Barry Allen. So obviously, because the thing is, because he did, he never took time to really get to know them. He didn't know, like, wait, you're looking into this monitor situation. So obviously, he must know more about the monitor than anybody else, which is interesting because it's also interesting when you actually think about it. Oliver doesn't know that Barry's on kind of the clock when it comes to this whole crisis situation. He thinks because I'm sure it's compartmentalizing of only letting certain people know. So Barry doesn't know what Oliver's up to. Oliver doesn't know what Barry and Team Flash are up to about the situation, because Oliver still doesn't know that, wait, Barry's supposed to die. Barry doesn't know, wait, Oliver's supposed to die during this crisis too. So it turns into that whole situation. So that's fascinating, to kind of think about. So I am very curious to find out, like, well, one, how does Wells know? Like, we found out at the end of that last episode, and it's still the big question of, well, what is your connection to the monitor? Why do you know him? Is he the reason? He seems like to be the reason why you're on this earth. Once again, I think that's why when he was near Iris, he was like, oh, this is what I'm looking for, because she and Barry are the only ones that have been around the monitor. They're actually the only ones that have interacted with him on Team Flash. So I think that might be it. And it's something else, but we'll see. We'll have to ultimately wait and see where all this takes us. What plan does he have in place to kind of help Barry? Does it have something to do with this Eternium that he was looking for? Is that connected to the monitor? Down there in that tunnel, are we going to find what the monitor is building potentially with Lilo? Like, she got some components for him, obviously, the episode before last of Arrow. So what is it that he's actually up to? Because obviously it's like, oh, is a good guy, bad guy? Things kind of lean towards the thought of, hey, maybe he's a bad guy, because he's definitely not telling us everything. So I am very, very interested to see ultimately where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of Arrow. Another great episode. A lot of interesting things went down this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, picking up where last week's episode left off us, we got the future and the present colliding. It's like, what? William, Mia, oh my God, my kid. Wait, last time we saw you didn't have an adult daughter. Wait, you didn't have an daughter at all. It's like, well, we kept this secret, which even Dinah was like, well, to be fair, some godlike being came to you to basically say, like, you're needed for what's about to transpire that's going to affect across the multiverse. It's kind of like, we can let this situation slide. Obviously, Mia, William, and Connor end up lying so much and it's so interesting because it is almost like history repeating itself, because it's like, well, particular people in Team Arrow keeping secrets. that's not too much of a surprise. More so than anything, this was Mia's idea, which is interesting and I love that it constantly getting thrown in Oliver's face. It's like, oh yeah, she's super stubborn and she's so dead set in her ways about certain things. Reminds you someone. It's like constantly people being like, she's totally your daughter. There's no denying it. Like Mia definitely, because William takes after Felicity and Mia definitely takes after Oliver, which is interesting because she never actually even got to know Oliver. So maybe it's just from the stories her mom told, but it's just naturally her personality is so in line with Oliver's. It's pretty intense. But it is that situation of none of them know how to handle this whole time travel thing, because it's like, well, it's a thing of like, because even Renee threw it out there. It's like, how do we know what we do is making a difference? I mean, obviously, we want to talk about time travel stuff. That's the Legends in the Flash department. I mean, obviously, Barry still, that's kind of a whole complicated thing for Barry because changing time hasn't always worked out and it hasn't always been what you thought it would be. But the Legends have a little more handle on this whole time travel thing. So if you want, you can call them the experts, but at the same time, it's like, well, they're not even experts themselves. The Flash, Team Flash is more expert than the Legends, just because the Legends are kind of like misfits when it comes to this whole time travel thing. But regardless, it's just fun to think about. But it is that thing of like, you don't want to tell them the truth because it's like, well, you'd have to admit like, oh right, JJ, Diggle's son, killed Zoe, Renee's daughter. So it's like, that's a whole complicated, thing in itself. So they do attempt to keep quiet about it, but eventually it comes out. And obviously that's a hard pill to swallow because for Renee, it's like, the fact of the matter is anytime he's spending with Zoe now, it's like, how can I keep going on like there's no problem when I'm literally knowing that every day is me literally counting down on the amount of time I have left with her. But, and it's a message that kind of resonates with everyone, being the thing is that we know what's happening in the future. Like, take this opportunity to do things differently, which that's the whole conversation. That's the whole thing about, I mean, that's once again making comparisons to the Flash. Is everything set in stone? Like, is them being here now what's going to change the tide? Why are they here now? Obviously, the Monitor must have brought them there, or not unless there's some other force at play here that led to that. But I would assume it'd be the Monitor. But the question is, why? For what purpose? Would you bring them here? And the thing is, it was only them because it turns out JJ wasn't brought there. So whatever's going on in that future is probably still going on. Not unless it's because I'm about to say not unless it's an antimatter thing, but it was like, no, it would eat the Earth. It wouldn't just eat the time, would it? You would think it would. Well, to be fair, it blocked Barry from going to the future. So I guess that wouldn't be too much of a surprise if you end up finding out the fact is that future might not exist anymore because it might be blocked by antimatter or, because Barry tried to do that, but I don't know. We'll see whether that ends up being the case or not. It could just be easily me overthinking it, but it could just be as simple as the Monitor to bring them there. But it's just kind of interesting because you would have assumed everyone there would have gotten brought there, but it's like, no, JJ didn't. Unless, like I said, we find out the secret is that JJ actually did. But considering the fact this episode deals with the Deathstroke gang, you would assume that he would have popped up by now. But we'll see. I also love that this episode we get Curtis back and everything, and he's kind of enjoying himself about this. It's like, dude, this is crazy. Even the fact is him and William working together, I didn't even think about it until he brought it up of like, right, it is like him and Felicity working together again in a sense. It's kind of like, it's them 2.0 when you actually think about it in the grand scheme of things. But I like that this, obviously it's not just like, you're here from the future and stuff like that. It's a super, super complicated situation because for one, it means like, oh yeah, right, the future they're from, it's kind of shit. So it's like, oh wow, so all our efforts to kind of protect the city and stuff like that, we thought we were doing good. Like, oh, maybe the future's brighter for Star City. Nope, because apparently things kind of go terrible. Renee also learns like, oh yeah, I was kind of corrupt. So, I won I was marrying everything, which he was super excited about. He's like, I gotta go tell D so I can like gloat in her face about this whole situation. So there's that. Obviously Diggle having to deal with the fact is of like, it's one thing to have someone who's not even your own son call you son, especially because you literally met Connor last episode and he was like 6 years old. So it's like, it's already tough enough to kind of deal with that, but also finding out not only is your son a bad guy, but he's a bad guy who killed one of your friend's daughter. It adds its complicated nature. And it's not something until the beginning of this episode I thought over. I was like, right, JJ and Connor's situation, I didn't even think about it. And it's a good thing Diggle brings it up this episode, was the whole his situation with his brother. It's like, and that's probably something they don't really know about. Might not even be something, because I'm sure it's not something Diggle ever talked about. But the fact is, he killed his own brother. Like, that's something that has always stayed with Diggle. He's never it took a while for him to kind of, I think even on some level he's still never forgiven himself. I think it is a thing of like, it's still something he carries with him all the way. So the whole fight between brothers, he understands that situation, and the fact of the matter is, he felt like, I didn't try hard enough to get out. I tried to reach out to my brother, but I didn't, and the circumstances led to what they were. But like, now he's got these two warring sons against each other, so it's like, the thing of like, you have to kind of change things. You have to do things differently this time around. And obviously Oliver's got his complications. Obviously things between him and William are good. I even love William goes like, Dad, I got something to tell you. I'm gay. He's like, yeah, me and your mom proved it. He's like, what, you knew? It's like, yeah, we were just hoping, when the time came that you'd come out to us yourself. But I mean, obviously with the way circumstances play out means that I wasn't there. So... But obviously, William and Oliver click a little more, because I think they come from a different perspective. Because with Oliver was around with William being a kid, like obviously he wasn't always there in William's life, even before the whole thing, because obviously he didn't know. But then obviously William was in his life for a little while, then he wasn't, and it seems like ever since he left to live with his grandparents, Oliver and William have never seen each other again. Now it's like he was never raised by Felicity, so it puts this whole their relationship is super complicated. But I think William, now that he's older now, seeing and understanding his dad's position kind of makes him kind of be a little more understanding of the circumstances, because now it's like, then he was a kid, he was a 13-year-old kid at this point in time, but now it's like, but I'm an adult now, so I have a different perspective on the situation. Whereas Mia had no relationship with Oliver at all, and for her it's a situation of, because you went off and wanted to be a hero, you being a hero kind of took precedence over you being there for me and mom. So it's kind of like anything that kind of went wrong, everything that went sideways, is because you weren't there. I mean, to be fair, she's just lashing out because she never really got to know Oliver. Like, at least William got to spend time with him. It's like, I was still a baby when Dad left, and, potentially went off and died, So it adds this complicated element of like, obviously she's kind of like, get out of my way. You're not my dad. You're just some guy in my way, which is kind of interesting because now we have Laurel and Mia kind of, bonding, because I think there's a little bit of a kinship there, because it's like, I'm sure Laurel sees a bit of herself in Mia. Not only, I mean, obviously she sees Oliver, but it's just like, okay, you want to kill this Grant dude. And it's like, how did you know? It's like, from one killer, I can recognize, that look in your eyes. And it's like, yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of your dad because he's actually kind of a dick, which is funny considering, but I guess it's like when you think about everything in the grand scheme of things, especially his complicated relationship with Earth 2 Laurel, even though he gave her chances in the beginning, she kind of spurned those chances, and then she tried to act redeemable, but obviously Oliver wasn't too keen on it. Yes, he's had his dickish moments, but because at the same time, it's like, and when he looks at her, there's still the thing of probably him thinking of their Laurel that they lost, and obviously Earth 1 Laurel and Earth 2 Laurel are not the same person. They have certain traits and certain personality quirks that are similar, but other than that, they're very different people. So, but for her, it's like, the fact of the matter is, she made a choice to try and talk Felicity out of killing Ricardo Diaz, which even me is like, wait, what? It's like, of course, your mom probably wouldn't want to talk about that, because that wasn't one of the highlights in her life. That's one of the things I'm sure she looks back on of like, that could have gone so much worse if Laurel hadn't talked me out of it, which is still kind of crazy to think about Laurel out of anyone talked you out of killing someone, so. But I think that in itself kind of changes the perspective on so much. Because Oliver, his approach to Mia ended up changing, because William is like, the fact of the matter is, I got it that you tried with me. Yeah, I just wanted I wish you had tried harder, pushed a little bit more. Like, yeah, I was a little resistant. I was young. I hated you a little bit. But it's like, I just wanted you to kind of go just a little above and beyond to reach out to me. And Mia's just kind of wanting you to do the same thing. And so when the time came down to take down Grant, who it is kind of interesting to hear him have this whole perspective of like, oh, take down the rich, and that whole system of things that he's kind of going for. It's interesting to hear that perspective, because I feel like, that's not a big thing that's not a real big perspective that Slade had. So I wonder, why does he specifically have that? I don't even think his brother feels that way too, because his brother's just kind of like I'm a mercenary for hire, so I just do what I want to. So it's like, where is Grant kind of getting that from? It's actually interesting to find out that he's actually the one that basically took JJ under his wing and, you know, groomed him to eventually take over the Deathstroke game, made JJ who he is now. He actually, you know. But when the time came, Mia didn't pull the trigger, on the bow. Oliver ended up getting in the way and stopping her, because I'm sure there's also a part of Oliver that's like, I don't want you to have to deal with the same thing I do. Like, the fact of the matter is, once you go down this path, like, there's no, you know, stopping. So he's probably trying to stop Mia from doing that. Because even then he was like, I can see it in your eyes. Because Oliver became a killer just because of, like, the circumstances that put him there. Everything he went through on Leanne, you made him think like, oh, I have to go further. I have to push further. You know, which even that's a conversation he had with Katana, like, this season, of how, like, you still have that look in your eye. Like, you're having, at that time, he had that look in his eye like he did all those years ago in Shanghai. So trying to stop his daughter from repeating the same mistakes that he did, stuff that took him a long time to kind of come to grips with, and kind of, you know, it's like, I don't want you to go down this path. I don't want you to go down that path, because it's going to be hard to come back from, because he's never forgiven himself down that path. And obviously there's a whole complicated nature of, like, right, there's so many things that Mia has to be informed on. I'm curious, like, it'll probably be in between episodes. It probably won't be full episodes dedicated, but it's like, yeah, Oliver's talking about the fact is, like, I never got to really know my dad, because, like, his dad had so many damn secrets. It's taken, even up to this point, literally up till last season, he was still learning about his dad's secrets with the whole, oh yeah, I have a half-sister, Kimiko, meaning you have a half-aunt out there, which are like, oh yeah, I just spent time with your aunt, Thea, and that's a whole complicated, you know, thing, which they're kind of starting up their own thing, her and Talia. So there's that, which there's also the canary system that was set up in the future. It's like, oh, why don't we set that up now? Which is pretty interesting that they're doing that, because I don't know if it's officially been greenlit yet, whether that's really going to be a thing or not, because I know regardless, the thing is, there has been talk about a canary spinoff of this, that it be Mia, Dinah, and Laurel, which would be pretty damn interesting to kind of have like a full-blown like canary gang, like, well, not gang, but group. And the fact is, we're getting the start of it in this. Could be it's definitely them setting up the potential for it to be something. I was curious because it was supposed to include Mia, but I was like, yeah, because we know Dinah and Laurel are older in the future, so I was like, is that what it's gonna be? But it's like, no, if this whole time thing sticks, whatever that ends up being or becoming, like, that could be one way of finessing that into a spin-off in its own regard. I don't know. I just think it's kind of interesting. Also, I got giddy because, you know, it's like Dinah walked back and she's like, yeah, Grant's going to be locked. I talked to, was it Gotham? I talked to, you know, and he got sent to Gotham. He's going to be in Blackgate. I'm like, yeah, I get giddy. It's like, yeah, because Batwoman is a part of this universe. We're probably going to get Gotham dropped way more than usual. Like, because Gotham has been referenced here and there across the Arrowverse. I feel like the most I've heard it like Batman references here and there throughout Arrow and other shows, but I feel like I hear it the most during Supergirl, but maybe that's just because there's definitely there's been references to Gotham and on Supergirl in particular, but it's neat to be like, yeah, Kate's, you know, doing her thing in Gotham as Batwoman. So I don't know, I just get giddy, you know, and like, yeah, but nevertheless, it's just interesting. Sorry. And then there's Diggle talking to Connor, trying to make him feel better, about making him realize, like, no, you are my family. The fact of the matter is, we'll figure something out about this whole JJ thing, that maybe we can shift things. And that's the thing with this new knowledge. And the fact is that even our crew is like, yo, future team is like, yeah, things have shifted. Things aren't going down the way they were. So the timeline is changing. I mean, to be fair, it takes a while before anything's 100% set in stone. We know that because of Legends, but this puts things in a very interesting position of like, well, because of nothing being 100% set in stone, and because they're here now, things are shifting. Now, what that future necessarily looks like, who knows? It's going to be interesting because obviously Oliver's still, you know, potentially going to die, but maybe things are going to change now. I was kind of hoping that this would be the storyline. I don't know if I brought that up. I feel like I talked about in the recording of like blending, because of what the Crisis thing represents in the comic books. You could do that just not only the multiverse, but against all across time too, to a certain extent. And it seems like we're kind of getting that blending now. But I kind of wondering whether they were going to do something like that. I expected it to be more so specifically tied to the Crisis event of like, wait, here's Mia, older William, like the whole future team Arrow, you know. And so, and I was wondering if, I was like, you're not going to do a thing of sending them back immediately. It's like, no, they're probably going to stay here either by the end of the series, they stay here entirely, or it's going to be a thing of, you know, maybe it's that thing of like, oh, they get erased because the future they're from no longer exists, or they kind of turn into a paradox thing of like, well, because once again, it turns into that whole canary thing of like, how do you set that up present day unless you're not setting that up present day? I'd assume so, just because of the whole Mia thing, and now that she's present day. But like I said, it could still be a future thing. We'll see how that. Like I said, because I'm not sure if that got greenlit. Like I remember that's been floating around a while. I know that was something we were thinking about. I don't know if that's something that's been fully ordered or whatever. But nevertheless, I am curious to see kind of how that will ultimately end up playing out, because I feel like whatever this circumstances is, however it plays out, won't be fully unveiled until maybe the Crisis stuff, more specifically probably at the very end of Arrow is probably when we'll really get the answers, you know, to all of that. So, with all this future talk, there probably won't be any crossing over of stuff until the Crisis event, but I can't wait for like, wait, what? This is future, you know, children. What? Oh, this is nuts. Wow, Oliver, you have, you know, which obviously is interesting because Barry had his whole situation with Nora, and now Oliver with Mia and William. So it's just kind of interesting. Kind of sadly, the timelines are kind of off in that regard for both of them. It's like, well, Barry's, you know, meeting his future child was last season. Oliver meeting his future children now, you know, so we'll see. But what is also interesting is what they set up at the end of Laurel, the monitor coming to her and being like, okay, I can bring your Earth back because I'm essentially a god, but you have to do something for me. You have to betray Oliver, which, hey, she's done it before, but this is a new and improved Laurel, but it means getting back her entire Earth. So it's like, yeah, it might mean betraying someone that, yeah, I still kind of think of as dick, but I don't know if she'll necessarily do that. Because I'm sure there's also a part of her that's like, but I can't, like, Oliver's in a position where he can't trust the monitor for his word, so who am I to really trust him either? So it's so interesting, like, why you do what you do, because it seems like everything has a purpose. Like is this some long plan? Like, once again, I guess it's meant to be something where it's like, I'm gonna put you through a trial, and if you fail that trial during this crisis event I put before you, because remember, everything Elseworlds related was supposed to be a trial. Maybe this crisis thing is supposed to be like the ultimate trial test to put forth of like, maybe for some sick pleasure of like, I want the world's greatest heroes push through everything, that basically he's setting up circumstances that will push them to become the mightiest and the greatest heroes, the legends that they're meant to be, you know, in a sense that maybe that's what he wants. He wants them at their peak of like, after everything you go through, it will make you stronger, and I want that version of you to go against me if he's playing the villain route, which it seems like he is, but, you know, in what scale and to what ends, you know, besides just kind of potentially just wiping everything out. The purpose is be like, why? What are you getting out of this? What are you planning? We still are unsure. All I know is we can't trust him. Oliver learned that. And now it's a whole thing of like, well, how do you fight a god? Well, the fact is, there are means to doing it, because Curtis is like, oh, I can recreate it, because basically it's the same energy that wiped out a universe. That same energy, if you replicate it, would be enough to take down a god, but it's going to need like plutonium. And he was like, what is it? He's like, I know a Russian someone that could do that, which I'm like, is that supposed to be set up for like Anatoly? Because like you almost have Oliver being like, who are you? And he kind of looks like, which makes me think, oh, are we going to see Anatoly again? Which would be pretty neat. But regardless, like I said, I cannot wait to see the continuation of, you know, like the conversations between everyone kind of getting caught up between each other and everything. I even love, like, I forgot that Curtis made reference to Shawshank Redemption, and then like Mia was like, Shawshank, and then Curtis like, do they not have movies in the future? I mean, considering the state of Star City, it's kind of like, plus you're already referencing a movie that present day is old. We're talking, what, years into the future, so making the movie even older than what it already is. So that's a whole thing. But yeah, like I can't wait to spend more time with this. It's just, I think we're gonna have a lot of fun with this. So I'm really curious to ultimately see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till next time we meet, be happy, be safe, love life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.